With the next update approaching rapidly and the introduction of the French naval tree coming along with it, let's take a look at the pre-order vessels and whether or not they'd be worth getting. I'll review the ships separately and afterwards discuss my overall opinion on both. Let's get started. First, the Aigle, a 4.3 French, obviously, rank 2 destroyer. Her main armament consists of 5 single 138.6mm guns. An odd caliber, but not to the French apparently. These guns come with semi-armor piercing and high explosive shells. As usual, I recommend mainly using the semi-armor piercing shells against most surface targets, with a small load of high explosive shells to deal with lighter targets or to knock out open gun mounts. These guns reload anywhere between 6.5 and 5 seconds depending on crew skills. A competitive reload speed for a destroyer. This only goes for her ready racks of course, but they do take a while to deplete and only add a second or so to the reload if they're empty. So nothing to worry about. But not all is smooth sailing. The traverse speed of these guns is horrible, coming in at 5 degrees a second, which is equal to the turret traverse on the Russian destroyer Moskva. Gun firing arcs on the other hand are pretty good. All in all, the guns perform rather well, but you need to be aware of the slow traverse when positioning the Aigle. As for additional gun armament, Aigle comes equipped with 4 single 37mm guns, 1 dual 37 and 2 dual 13.2mm heavy machine guns. The 37s are single-fire 37s similar to those found on most German destroyers. In total, this is a rather lackluster auxiliary armament, with the 13.2s having to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to anti-air duties. Though the 37s can come into their own when engaging larger and slower air targets. The 37s can also be controlled directly together with the main guns when enabling the option to do so. When it comes to the explosive armament for the Aigle, he carries a total of 6 torpedoes and 2 triple launchers. These launchers have pretty limited firing arcs for a destroyer, but it is still acceptable. The torpedoes themselves are alright. With a payload of 308 kilograms of TNT, they'll punch a decent hole into most opponents at that battle rating. Range and speed depend on whether or not you equip the torpedo mode modification. With a top speed of 72 km an hour and a range of 9 km, without the modification equipped, and otherwise a speed of 65 km an hour and a range of 13 km. This is one of those cases where equipping the torpedo mode modification isn't that bad of an idea, though I personally still prefer more speed over a range upgrade, especially since 9 km isn't that bad of a range at all. Now onto Aigle's other specs. First of these, her mobility. Aigle has a respectable top speed of 71 km an hour forwards and 25 km an hour in reverse. She also handles well in the turn, though drastically loses speed while doing so. Seeing as the French naval crews are most likely also going to be very low level for most people, I would recommend trying to get some levels in ship control, as Aigle does feel pretty slow to come to a halt, which has led to me personally overshooting some positions of cover, though that could just be me. Survivability is certainly not a strong suit of Aigle, with open gun turrets, a large silhouette, and slightly exposed frontal magazine, not to mention all the ready racks around the vulnerable turrets. Aigle does have some fuel tanks covering parts of her engines, though their coverage isn't perfect. Aigle is definitely more on the fragile side of things when it comes to a destroyer. When it comes to playstyle, Aigle is certainly something I would describe as a flanking ship. Your speed allows for decent positioning, though Aigle is not that exceptionally fast. Her guns pack quite a punch as well as a good rate of fire, but their poor traverse rate as well as poor survivability of both the guns and Aigle herself does not fare well in any kind of brawling scenario. You need to make sure that you keep your target in your gun sight. If you're able to do that, then Aigle should be able to treat you well. So to summarize, firepower is good, almost excellent if it wasn't for the traverse and open turrets. Auxiliary armament is lackluster against small targets, and almost okay against larger aircraft. Torpedoes are good, mobility is good, survivability is okay, but more on the fragile side of things, and playstyle, flanking. I'll save the verdict for later, but overall the Aigle is a pretty good destroyer, pretty fun too, as it is a very potent platform with distinct limitations. a good challenge for the more experienced naval player. And then of course there is the Guet-Trouin, a rank 3 4.7 cruiser. The Guet-Trouin is armed with 8 155mm guns and 4 dual turrets. Turret rotation is fine for a cruiser. Turret armor is non-existent at 30mm, but that's not too detrimental for a 4.7. Reload speed of the ready rack varies between 13 and 10 seconds depending on the crew skills, and depletion of the ready rack will add roughly 6 seconds to the reload. Quite a noticeable penalty. Shell choice is a bit more complicated for the Guet-Trouin, carrying a high explosive base fuse, and semi-armor piercing. The high explosive is ordinary, but the high explosive base fuse and semi-armor piercing shells get confusing. The high explosive base fuse shell has 2.9 kg of filler, a maximum penetration of 89mm, and a fuse delay of 15 milliseconds. The semi-armor piercing shell has a filler of 3.69 kg, 101mm of maximum penetration, and a 10 millisecond fuse delay. So more filler, more pen, but a shorter fuse than the high explosive base fuse shell. I have come to prefer the semi-armor piercing shell due to the much higher filler, though I still don't quite know which of these shells is best for armored targets, so be sure to experiment. Confusing main guns aside, the auxiliary armament consists of 4 single 75mm guns near the smoke funnels, 6 40mm Bofors, and 20 20mm Oerlikons. All in all, a decent short-range anti-air suite. And whilst on the live server currently the 75s do not have a time fuse shell, it will get one when the update goes live, somewhat enhancing the lacking long-range anti-air suite. I will say that these 40mm, whilst being good anti-aircraft guns, are too few a number to really make up a good medium-range anti-air suite, though the tracers can most certainly scare off some of the more timid pilots. Sadly, the Guet-Trouin does not carry any explosive ordnance. The mobility of the Guet-Trouin is average for a cruiser with a top speed of 61 km an hour, and an alright turn radius, just average for a cruiser, but at 4.7 it can feel a bit sluggish compared to its battle rating peers. And the farther spawn point doesn't help either. Survivability isn't much to brag about either, as it doesn't have any armor on the hull, and the Citadel only consists of a 20mm and 14mm plate. Though the spacing of the armor does allow for a bit more effectiveness, while angled it can shrug off some destroyer shells, but the armor is generally not reliable. Playstyle is difficult to describe, because matchmaking in realistic battles at the moment is very rough. You'll always fight Moffats, and lots of them. And 4.7 cruisers are 4.7 for a reason. The Guet-Trouin can do a bit of everything, as it is a pretty average cruiser. I would recommend you try and use it in cover to the best of your ability to compensate for the poor survivability. Brawling or sniping can both work, as the guns are pretty good and work on pretty much all targets you will see at this battle rating. So see what you can do in it, as I have yet to master this ship myself. To summarize, the firepower is good for the battle rating, though the shells are confusing. Anti-air is good at close range, though only really at close range. Mobility is average, survivability is fragile for a cruiser, and playstyle is whatever suits your taste, though don't be too aggressive. The Guet-Trouin has been a difficult ship for me to get a good grasp on, because of the weird shells and the awkward matchmaking in that battle rating. It should be a pretty good average cruiser, but my experience in it has been very mixed. Just a reminder, before I get into my verdicts, I review my ships in the context of realistic battles, which in recent times have not been all that nice. If you mainly play arcade, your experience may differ quite greatly. Now, to get to the point, should you get the French pre-order ships? Yesn't. You can only get them in packs, and these packs are as follows. The Aigle pack, containing Aigle, obviously, 1000 golden eagles and 7 days for premium for, in my case, €30. Aigle is a rank 2 with an RP modifier of 1.18 and an SL modifier of 2.55, again unrealistic. De Guettrouin contains the cruiser, obviously again, 2000 golden eagles and 15 days of premium for €45 in my case. De Guettrouin has an RP modifier of 1.48 and an SL modifier of 4, the same as the Moffat. It heavily depends on why you're considering getting a French premium in the first place. If you just want the cheapest and easiest way to get into the French naval closed beta access, Aigle is the obvious choice, and I want to assure you that the ship itself isn't too bad, but it does require a certain amount of skill to use to its fullest. De Guettrouin is the more expensive option, and I can't in all earnestly recommend it, and that is mainly due to my experience in it with realistic battles amidst the botting problem. On paper it should be a perfectly fine 4.7 cruiser, and if you're looking to buy a premium to grind a French 3 with, or at least the early ranks, it may still work for you. I just found it very rough in the current realistic battle matchmaking. However, if you do not want to give the snail any money, which I can understand with the recent events, you should be able to get access to the French naval tree by completing tasks when the update goes live. We don't know yet what these tasks will be, but if I am to look at the previous tech tree editions, it seems to be something of the line of get 5 victories with a certain activity percentage, whilst playing, in this case, ships, for 12 days straight. Well, 12 days. Get 12 stars. If you're a regular naval player, this shouldn't be too difficult to do, and both Aigle and De Guettrouin do also have tech tree counterparts. So if you don't really have the money or you do not want to give the snail any money for these premium packs, there should still be a free option to get the French naval access in this update, if you're willing to work for it a little bit. And that is it. Thank you for watching. This video has been way too long in the making, and I'll see you in the next one.